The qualities needed to reconnect with family. Episode 1, Deference. That's the topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by instantmediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Hi, I'm Mac attorney, mediator, and arbitrator working throughout Florida and Texas.
And I am Natalia advocate, mediator, and arbitrator based in Warsaw, Poland.
And I am Brett Lovett, founder of Family Reconcile and the Compassion Project.
Everybody watching and listening, be sure to check out this show and podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast, and on the Instant Mediations app.
All right. So, Brett, thank you for being with us today. This is a first episode of sorts where you're going to be talking about various qualities needed to reconnect with family. And this is the reason I say it's a first episode of sorts. It's because you're coming on to Instant Mediations to be a co-host and do your own series along with us. And so we're very, very glad to have you. Now, this being the first show, I wanted to let viewers and listeners know a little bit about what you do, what your experience has been, what your path has been like, and what you're doing right now, okay? And then we can segue into the episode 1, deference quality that we are engaging in today. So please tell us a little bit about you and familyreconcile.com, which you run.
Yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate being here. Appreciate this opportunity. And I appreciate both of you and all the hard work and great work that you do. Family Reconcile is, so I have a background as a mediator, just to start there. And then that segued into some teaching of of conflict resolution. And then from there, I saw a trend, if you might want to say it, in just how I saw people engage with one another, especially in families, doing mediator work. And I thought to myself, when I saw the difficulties and I saw the estrangement, I thought to myself, well, it doesn't have to be this way. And it made me think of that philosopher George Santayana's words, where he said that those that don't learn from history, they're doomed to repeat it. And I thought, is that what's happening to our society? As you see families, break apart as you work through these through these different difficulties. It just made me think, and that's really what Family Reconcile was born out of. You also have to add the COVID aspect of that. COVID-19 exacerbated this estrangement issue in families that's always been there. It's an age-old problem, but COVID really put a completely different spin on it. It elevated it, so to speak. I think there's some work that we need to do there, each one of us. We're all family members, right? We all came from somewhere. We all have parents, maybe we have siblings, but we all have somebody that we're related to. And just at that level, if you're interacting with others in your family, you're at some level a mediator, aren't you? Because you're working through difficulties, you're working through communication issues at some point. Some are minor, some are heavier, but we need to work on qualities, each one of us. If we do that, maybe we can turn this estrangement trend around and really head in a positive direction. And that's what Family Reconcile is about. It's reconnecting people who are having difficulty by showing a better way.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your kind words towards us. Speaking about our topic, and especially me being a non-English, non-native English speaker, what is deference?
Yeah, deference. You can look it up online. You can pull out your dictionary. It's generally going to hover around this definition. It is a yielding to another person's opinion or wishes out of respect. So maybe a couple different versions of it, but generally those definitions are gonna revolve around yielding to another person's opinions or wishes out of respect.
Okay, so go into this a little bit deeper with us. So there's transactional versus transformational types of relationships. Could you explain a little bit more how deference can be applied to relationships?
Yeah. So when you think about the quality of deference and you think I key in on the definition. So the definition says a yielding to another person's opinion or yielding to another person's wishes out of respect. So it doesn't say yielding to another person's accurate facts. It doesn't say yielding to when another person is absolutely right. It says yielding to another person's opinion or their wishes. That is a peculiar quality, and one that isn't, I don't think, easy for us as humans or natural. If and you can think about yourselves, and the listeners can think about themselves. Just think about a conversation where you were talking with a family member, and no matter what that discussion was about, perhaps as the person was talking, you might have thought, well, I know where they're going with this. Matter of fact, I can finish what they're going to say. And matter of fact, you might think that they're drawing either a wrong conclusion or an inaccurate conclusion, or not, perhaps not the best conclusion. So this is where deference comes in. If you're using a sense or your tools, your internal emotional intelligence, if you want to call it that, this is where yielding would come in. And you would ask yourself, is it important? Is it critical to this conversation and ultimately to the relationship that I correct this person, or that I make this person understand they don't have all the facts, or that I make this person understand that they're not right? So that's deference. It's yielding to that tendency to want to make sure somebody knows that you know better, or that you know more accurately, and out of respect, you choose not to do that.
So let me ask you, is there any part of that that can become, I guess, a form of enablement to a bully? Is that a
I
possibility?
that's a great question. Anything is possible.
Hmm.
So deference doesn't mean. Let me just try to put this in the best words I can. Deference doesn't mean laying down and being a floor mat.
Okay.
That's not what deference is. Deference is a quality that you choose to use in appropriate circumstances. Because I think if you're being bullied, or you're in a situation where you're being bullied, or you're dealing with harassment in some sort of form, I don't know if deference is the right word, for that. I think there's other things going on. Um, uh, deference is a quality of control and power in a good way, because you're exercising control and power over your own thoughts. You're yielding, you're restraining yourself from doing something that you could do, but you're not doing it because it's in the best interest of the other person. It's in the best interest of the relationship. If you're being threatened in some way or harassed, and you lay down, it's not because you're showing deference. There's some other quality going on there. There's fear or retaliation, or some of those things. So we're speaking about deference, and you can get imbalanced. You can become unbalanced with any quality, but we're speaking about this quality in the sense that you understand it, you control it, and you're using it where you choose to use it. That's the context that I'm using deference in.
Gotcha. So can you flesh out a little bit more about what you mean by transactional versus transformational?
Yeah, transactional. I mean, there's two types of relationships. Really, there's two types of relationships. One is transactional, and one is transformational. A lot of us, just to give an example of transactional, when you go to the grocery store and you get groceries and you go into the line, you're getting goods and you're paying for those goods. So, at a real low level, that's a transactional relationship. Transactional relationships are not bad. You need transactional relationships in order to acquire necessities, right? But transformational relationships, especially when it comes to family, the difference there is that it's not a you're not trying to if it is a transformational relationship, you're not trying to get something for something. So transactional is what can I get for this? Here's the issue that I see a lot personally in families is that there's this blurred line between transactional and transformational. Many families operate in a transactional setting. Where do you think the phrase "meet me halfway" comes from? Okay, when you say "meet me halfway," that's a transactional type of phrase, because what you're saying is, I'm going to go this far and I expect you to meet me at this particular point. So it's a getting for giving. It's what am I going to get for this? And you see that. I think if we have to operate in society like that, and then you come home, it's hard to kind of take the one hat off and put the other hat on, right? But if we become aware of it, and we think about it, we ponder on it, and we work on it, and we try to make these applications in our family, then understanding the difference between transactional and transformational can be transformational in your relationships with your family, because a transformational relationship is not what can I get for this, it's how much can I give. So meet me halfway doesn't really exist in a transformational relationship. You're looking in the best interest of the other person, and you're not only going to not require that you be met halfway, you're going to go the whole way if you have to, because that's what the relationship is that's what it means to you. And so you're coming at it from that principled point of view, as opposed to what can I get for this, and I'm going to make sure that I don't go more than I have to.
Thank you so much, Brett, for that. And listening carefully to what you have just said, I was thinking how I can make it understandable also to people who might have less experience with that, but being a family mediator, being a family lawyer, dealing with family conflicts every day, I do think that in a way, difference can be phrased as something like the ability to let things go. So the ability to control yourself and emotions in order to see and respect the other person that you are dealing with, and see things in a broader perspective, saying that maybe I am not winning this battle, which is, again, speaking in wrong terms, but I'm seeing things in a broader perspective, and I see that if I am being respectful in this very situation, I am going to win something long term that is going to really make our entire relationship better. And this is the perspective that we need to apply every single day, speaking to people that we care for. And just like I'm resigning from this perspective, if we have an argument, I need to win. So in my practice, I do meet a lot of people who have this approach. I am right, and she or he needs to admit it. And deference adopts an entirely reverse perspective. I might be right, but it is good for our relationship that this person that is speaking with me feels good about herself, feels listened to, feels respected. And this is how I get it from what you just described. But I guess you have a lot of different valuable examples to share with us to help us understand and use it better in our lives.
Yeah, I think you articulated that really well, Natalia. It's not keeping score. In a transactional relationship, you keep score, right? These are the groceries, and here's the amount of money. You don't. If the bill is $50, do you give them 60? Do you give them 70 or 80? No, you give them the exact amount. That's a transaction, and you're keeping score. So hopefully that makes sense. In a transformational relationship, if you're not approaching the matter as what can I get for this, you're approaching the matter in what is possibly in the best interest of the other person, because that's really in the best interest of all when you're talking about family, right? If you're a family, what's in the best interest of a family member is quite possibly in the best interest of you and everybody in the family. So a transformational, type of approach or relationship building is contributing to it gets rid of this keeping score. You're not keeping score. You're not meeting halfway. You're not requiring. You're not making demands. All those are all terms involved in a transactional relationship. Those are not terms applicable in a transformational relationship. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll give you a teenage girl. For fashion purposes, she likes to occasionally wear jeans to high school that have little rips or tears in them. But she won't wear them to grandma's house. Why? Well, because out of deference, she'll refrain from doing that. That's a gesture of respect to her grandma. Okay. So, I mean, we can apply it, in a simple level. Like how does a couple, spouses, how do they apply it? Do you ever have conversations where there are opinions, or with family members? It doesn't have to be spouses. It could be spouses with, spouses with each other. It could be parents with their children. It could be siblings. It doesn't matter what it is. Do you ever have conversations where you're talking about a subject and there's two different perspectives, and neither one is arguably the right one? Yet we approach those conversations often as if our position is the right one. See, that's a mindset. What are we trying to accomplish? See, those are the things that we need to ask ourselves. How important is it that I be right on this matter? How important is it that, if it's not life-threatening and it's not really hurting something, why do you have to win the point, or why do you have to come out on top of the conversation as far as maybe having the corner on understanding it? Even if you do, see, that's another aspect of deference that I think goes unnoticed, is that I'm not talking about when it's even. I'm talking about when somebody actually does know better. Somebody may know better. They may have more of the facts. Somebody else may be drawing not the best conclusion. What I'm saying is, if that's not going to burn down the house, might this be an opportunity where we can show deference? How about children that are growing up? See, John Sullivan, professor at MIT, he talked about connection, and he says, look, from the very beginning, families have forces kind of working against them to pull them apart. And he said, as a family matures, they have to confront that feeling that, ooh, hey, things are changing. And that's difficult. So communication, he said, becomes paramount, because the connections that family have become paramount, and you need communication in order to achieve that. If you achieve that's where the happiness lies. It lies in that connection. So there's a lot of research out there about these things. Solomon had some good articles on this. There's a Journal of Family and Medicine. They did like a decade long, like a 10-year study. And I referred to it in the beginning, just talking about how technology has helped in some ways, but it is also, there's been a side effect, and it's kind of created this force that we're talking about. One of the forces kind of pulling at families, the sacredness of the family, right, is kind of waned a little bit. People seem a little bit more willing to, not put effort into maintaining relationships. Let me finish the thought with this. There was a nice example given by Brene Brown, who's a psychologist, and I think she's in the university. I think she's at University of Houston, if I'm not mistaken. And she gave this nice illustration on the difference between sympathy and empathy, and it ties into deference, and it ties into what we're talking about here. She said, you're down in a hole and you can't get out of it. And she says, what is sympathy? Sympathy is somebody coming by and saying, wow, you're in a really tough position down there. You want a sandwich? So, it's this tendency to say, okay, here's this issue, and now I'm going to find something real quick to fix it, whether it's applicable or not. She said, whereas empathy is, you get down in that hole with the person. You say, I don't know how you got down here, and I don't know how we're going to get out either. I'm just so glad that I found you, and I'm so glad you told me about what's going on here. So she said, that's empathy. And what empathy does that sympathy does not is it creates connection. We don't generally solve things We don't generally, and this is good for lawyers and mediators to understand, you don't generally solve things through suggestion. You solve them through connection. And that's something that she highlighted. Yes, it's applicable. It could be applicable in the courtroom. It could be applicable anywhere, but we're talking about in the circumstances of family. How applicable is that in the family? You know, you don't fix things through suggestion. You fix them through connection. Deference is a quality that contributes to connection, not to suggestion.
Thank you so much for that. And I would like to follow on it because we concentrate on things that can appeal in a conversation, on also an argument. But speaking to you, I see it clearly that this is also an element of real acting, of your behavior in a relationship. You paying attention to someone, being respectful to someone, you will avoid certain situations, being in certain places that will make or being in a particular environment or friends that the other person might get upset about knowing that you did that. And it might be very pleasurable with you to go and hang around with the boys and have a beer, but you know that your wife is going to be very unhappy about it. And this is why you say, honey, I know, and out of respect to you, I prefer stay with you and watch the soap opera you love so much.
That's an applicable example, exactly. Because he's deference, it borrows from the root to defer. So he's deferring to his wife's not opinion, but her wishes, which is what ties in with that definition. So that's certainly an applicable illustration of where, between two spouses, someone could show deference. Remember the word too that they used is yielding. So yielding, what is yielding? Because we throw around all these terms, right? Okay, well, what is it? Well, yielding is not insisting on your rights. It's not insisting on your demands. So, when we're dealing with family or we're talking to family, no matter what the dynamic of the relationship is, all I'm saying and all what we're trying to do through this series is think about qualities that we can call to mind, that we can apply in a particular moment, that will create a dynamic that supports that family, that supports connection, that supports the long-term goal of that family. See, that's transformational. If you're approaching whatever you're talking about from a transactional point of view, you're not thinking long-term, you're thinking right in the moment. That's the difference. That's another difference between those two.
Thank you for that. And please let me ask you another question. I understand that if this difference comes into play in a conversation, you will not be saying as a result of it, I know I was right, but I am not telling you that because that would hurt you. But please know that I am reserving my right to keep my own opinion. But of course, it is something absolutely inappropriate to do because, again, you belittle this other person, make her feel uncomfortable. It's actually about staying silent and composed about it and making peace with yourself that you are not showing that you are right this very moment. However, is it worthwhile, and this is the actual question, is it worthwhile bringing this up when your deference makes some sort of a sacrifice, some sort of real effort from yourself, like doing something positive or refraining from something that you would normally do? Is it worth bringing it up to your spouse or to another person in this relationship to say, listen, I did it for you?
That's a great question, Natalia. I think I would answer that by saying it depends on what you want. What do you want? What you want is going to determine how you behave. So do you want to be right at all costs? You might be able to, but there will be consequences to that. If what you want is to contribute to a relationship or an arrangement out of the best interest of that relationship, then that's going to determine your behavior. That's going to determine what you want. I mean, look at Mac. Mac has to do this all the time with me. You know how many times Mac can tell me, gosh, I know so much more than Brett. So I have to deal with this with him personally. And I know all the times that he, half the time he does say, I know better than you, Brett. And then half the time he probably defers. So he's doing well.
That's a joke, everybody.
So,
Brett, him so well.
hopefully that's not a kooky answer for you. It really depends on what you want. See, if you want what's in the best interest of the relationship, that's going to dictate your behavior. That's going to dictate, hey, how am I going to react? Do I have to say I'm right, even when I know I'm right? Most of the time we're trying to say that we're right, and we actually don't even know that we're right. We just feel that we're right. And so these are dynamics that play into every relationship every day. So you have to ask yourself, what do you want? And then once you figure out in your head what you want, then your behavior will follow that. So, that's why this is a series. You guys know how many qualities we're gonna talk about that are gonna relate to relationship. This is just one. And look, we can go on and on and on and on about it. Okay, look, I love history. I love history. Ancient history, civilization, ancient civilizations. I'm also, a Bible reader. I enjoy the Bible. I enjoy the history that comes out of the Bible. Let me just throw a fascinating account out. Maybe you know of this, and maybe the listeners have heard of it. Maybe they haven't. And so there's an account in the Bible where there's an individual doing harm. He's trying to plan to do harm or damage to God's people, Israel. So the fascinating part of the account is God calls his angelic host together, and he asks for ideas on how to stop or subvert the individual that's planning to do harm or damage. Now, if you're God, you know what needs to be done. You know what's best. Isn't it interesting that the account relates that he asked for ideas and then chose one of the ideas of one of the angelic hosts and said, we're going to do that. That's deference. And that's deference at the highest level, because nobody knows more than that personage. And yet even though he knew he could do something better, or he could come up with something better, he said, let's go with that. So what he did is he gave credit. He gave credit to one of his angelic hosts. And in deference, building relationships, transformational relationships, hover around giving credit. Not just when credit's due, but giving credit. So when you're given credit, how do you feel? Ask yourself that. I mean, I know how I feel, and I'm sure the two of you know how you feel when you're giving credit. So do you see how transactional is an exact accounting? I go back to this. It's an exact accounting. It's a this for that. It's a meet me halfway. I hope that what comes out of this program or this show today is I want people hopefully just to think about as they go out, right? And here's one of the great things about this show too, and why I enjoy doing this with you, is that we don't have to go and purchase something. We don't have to go and ask we don't have 6 or 7 more steps. Whatever we're talking about here, we can turn the record button off, go in the next room, and apply it with whatever family member is there. To me, that's powerful. Now, as we work on these qualities and we kind of hone them and we apply them, can you imagine the change that can have in your relationship? And if you're having that change in your relationship, well, who are they going to affect? So we're trying to build, it's that ripple effect. You throw the water in, and the ripple goes all the way over to the other side. Doesn't matter how big or small it is. It's just the fact that it reaches the other side. And that's what this is about. That's what these qualities, are about. So I want the people to think as they go about today, as I'm talking to my spouse, or I'm talking to my children, or I'm talking to the neighbor, am I transacting or am I transforming? That's what I want people to ask.
Thank you so much, Brett. This episode went a little over because we had to talk about the basis as to what got you here, right? So the other ones in the future will be a little bit quicker because of the fact that we'll get right into that quality. But 2 points that I wanted to make before we closed out. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your thoughts on this. Um, a reason that we were interested in talking about this with you is because a lot of people went through a lot of pain over the last year in 2020 because of COVID, where people were isolated, they were alone, and they were disconnected from their families. Many people had stories where a loved one was passing away at a nursing home or at a hospital, and they could not go and be with them. And once COVID in many parts of the country and world started ebbing away, there then started to be the opportunity for people to reconnect and come back together. But I think to many people, they want to make sure they do things right this time. Okay. I think a lot of people had regrets during COVID of, man, somebody's in my family is dying from COVID, isolated, alone. I'm not going to be able to go see them and say, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to go work, make peace with them. Okay. That was devastating for a lot of people. And so the reason that we wanted to do this is because now there's a reconnection opportunity that exists for a lot of folks. And if people are serious about wanting to fix those relationships, wanting to get them back intact and go post COVID into a whole new type of pattern, then it's important that we now learn these skills because we're not born with these skills. We have to learn them. Okay. We make so many errors along the way. We need to spend the time and actually take the affirmative step. So that's my first point. My other point is for mediators who might be listening, this is now one of those things you can put in our toolbox because when parties come to us with conflict, especially in family law, parents fighting over kids, spouses who are divorcing or whatever, the question of do you have to be right or can you yield? The question of how much credit can you give the other person and look at things from their point of view, that needs to constantly be brought up because those are great ways for us to help people make good negotiated settlements and reach peace, especially again when children are involved. So those are the 2 points I wanted to make. Again, thank you so much. But if you want to add anything to that, we'll give you another minute.
No, you spoke well, and you're exactly right. And just to add to, I guess, to the COVID part is this is a reset. So we can look at it as a reset. Look at society. What do you see in society? I don't see a whole lot of deference in society. I don't see it on the news. I don't see it in politics. I don't see it in sports. I don't really see a whole lot of deference. I see a lot of transaction, a lot of, what do I get for this? And what I'm saying is if we are really serious about making, we can talk the talk, but if we're really serious about improving our family life and really improving we could just as easily have named this show the qualities needed for any relationship, not just qualities needed for family related. Okay. So, this is our opportunity to put our actions where our words are, reset, and start working in a different direction. And we start today are my relationships transactional or are they transformational? And I think if we start there, then that's a good starting point, and let's work from there.
Thank you so much. All right. With that, guys, we're taking off. And until next week when we'll do episode 2, can't wait to find out what the quality is going to be and what we're going to be talking about. So stay tuned. Again, it's at mediations.com where you can get everything, including checking out Brett's recordings with us and YouTube channel. All right. So long. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye-bye now.
Until next time.